Happy Tuesday and welcome back to the Wolff Den presented by Win Again Academy. Mark Moyer doing some great things with his informational and networking events. They have a great event, a two-night event tonight and tomorrow for people looking to get into the sports world, sports biz. Check out winagainacademy.com. I'm Matt Wolff, founder and CEO of Ticket Time Machine. Today we welcome Barry Kleiman to the Wolff Den. Barry, hope you had a great holiday weekend. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I did, as I was just talking to a friend of mine, a coach actually down in Southern California. It's pretty surreal. We were actually in the real world this weekend, not attending games with thousands of fans, but actually walking around towns and getting an ice cream. And you're in Florida, right, Matt?
Yeah.
It's pretty different here in California. It's really different. And, but it felt good. I won't lie, it's a little strange, but long story short, we did have a good weekend. I was almost enjoyed being in some of the traffic just to kind of get a sense that maybe there's some quote unquote normalcy, whatever that means, returning to the world. So how about you?
Yeah, well, I think that it does. I agree with everything. It feels weird. It feels good. California is getting there. From what I can tell, it sounds like by the fall they're going to have a bunch of stuff going on, and who knows what. We don't know what any of it's going to come, whether it's California or Florida or Iowa. Who knows? It's kind of half of it's just the luck of the draw.
I think that's right. I don't know. I'm doing my level best to do my level best for all of this, and I don't know. It'll just be an interesting next hunk of time. I don't even know what that means. I'm the, amongst other things, I'm the chair of the U16 national team that's going to travel for Maccabi USA, which is actually the Maccabi is the third largest sporting event in the world. I was fortunate enough to be the U16 coach back in 2013, got to wear USA on my chest and recruit kids from all over the country, and amazing experience, traveled to Israel for more than 3 weeks. And anyway, but this year I'm quote unquote, I'd hate to say giving back, I'm giving as the chair. So now we picked a coach, but the games were already put off for a whole year. They were supposed to be this summer and they were put off for a year. And so, reaching out to people from all over the country to see if their kids want to compete and try out. It's a whole different messaging, right? Because of that part of the craziness of the world. No, so it's not just COVID now. Now it's unrest in the Middle East and getting your kid to travel. So it's all. My general mantra in life is one day at a time, but this is really one day at a time. It's like,
it's all really a crapshoot. I mean, that's what it is. Everything. Yeah, that's what it is. But some are better educated guesses than others to understand what kind of danger you're putting yourself in, whether it's physical or health. Or we hope to have Steve Graber on with the Maccabi games.
Oh, great! So Steve is. Yeah, he's almost a boss of mine, right? I mean, he handles one side. He's a great guy. Lou Moyerman, who's actually running the games this year, he's the overall chair. He's the boss, so he's the don, and I'm going to see him. Hopefully, he's coming to California in a couple of weeks. But Steve, all these people do great work. But to what you just said, it right. It's a crapshoot, and we're all trying to figure it out. Anyway, so I could go on and on about this. I just bring it up in anecdotal to the crapshoot and how pervasive it is, kind of stretching out to all different areas. Up in the Sacramento area in California, they've been playing, basketball tournament, AAU games, whatever, like nothing ever happened. Like COVID never existed. I'm not here to judge. It's all fluid. And anyway, but
I haven't played. So I used to play a lot of pickup basketball, and I haven't played.
There you go.
I played with my neighbor, who I feel comfortable with in a sense, but I haven't gotten back to the courts yet. Again, it's the odds are very low. I'm vaccinated now, so maybe I'll go back out. Who knows? But they've been playing basketball. The NBA did a good job.
Great job.
College, got through it all. Almost you don't see a whole lot of sports being shut down because of COVID. So hopefully everyone, from the Olympics to the Maccabi to your rec leagues, so kids can go and have something to do. It's all important. You're coaching basketball.
Correct.
Right?
Yes. Right. Yeah. That's correct. Yeah. And I know in Florida, a guy who I coached with, we did a hybrid trip with Maccabi back in 14, and we traveled to England and Amsterdam and Germany. Anyway, he's a high school coach down in Florida. I can't remember the name of the school. It's a very well-regarded high school or prep school program out in the Miami area. He told me they never blinked. They had their full season and whatever. And a guy who I coached in high school at Berkeley High, Sean Burrell, he's up in Seattle, and they're just starting their season now. It's all. Anyway, but,
yeah, I think, and then part of the problem moving forward is going to be when you start adjusting your schedules. When can you get back to the schedule when everyone knows, hey, this is when this starts, this is when that starts.
Correct.
We'll find out. I mean, you have July, right? The NBA is going through July 4th, past July 4th, maybe depending on how many games. They got to get to a point where they can get back, and some of that might mean sacrificing something is better than continuing on. I don't know. Maybe this is the new
normal.
Yeah, maybe it's what they do. I don't know. I don't know if it works for them. They'll have to decide. Obviously, money is going to be a big factor in that. So we'll see. How did you get? You've been a coach for a long. I guess we didn't even get an introduction for you. I like to have everyone introduce themselves, but you've been a coach for a long, long time.
I have.
And tell people,
sure,
how that started.
Yeah, thank you. I have been a coach for a long. So I was an education major in college. I went to Penn State. The only thing I ever knew I wanted to do in my life was to teach and coach. I knew it since I was 18. I was a good basketball player, but I'm 5'9", and I wasn't really ever going to go anywhere. But I love the game. And the game is still my mistress, and whatever. But my wife knows about it. But when I got out of college, and then I'm dating myself, but obviously I'm old. In 1971, you couldn't get a teaching job. Literally, you couldn't get one because you could get a draft deferment from the Vietnam War if you went into teaching. So the whole world went into teaching, including my older brother, who didn't. I adore him, but he didn't want to teach. So, so there were literally no teaching jobs. So I just, coming out of Penn State with a ton of coursework in kinesiology and physio, I didn't know what to do. And my counselor at the time, which is part of that program comes to what I'm trying to do now with the Fifth Quarter Project. But my counselor, I think, did their best to direct me to something that was related, but physical therapy is not coaching basketball. And, and there was no one in 1971 ever heard of physical therapy. In retrospect, had I jumped into that field, Matt, and had 9 clinics and, in every state or 9 states, I'd probably be a wealthy guy at this point, right? Because physical therapy is a big deal. But in 1971, nobody knew what it is. So anyway, I just bumped around, and I was in New York at the time, and I moved here to California. Grew up in Philly, and in the late 90s, I started my job as in executive search. I literally just retired from that after 48 years last year. But my kids went to a little private Hebrew day school that had no sports at all. And I walked into the headmistress. I read a book called In These Girls, Hope is a Muscle. This is actually a quick, funny story if I can, because it comes full circle. I read this book called In These Girls, Hope is a Muscle. And I put the book down and I said, Barry, I hope this is not too family oriented. I said, Barry, you're a shitty father. You had never exposed your kids to competitive sports. They weren't that interested. But anyway, the school, it was, perfect storm. The school had nothing. I wanted to expose my kids here in middle school. So I walked into the headmistress's office and I told her I want to start a basketball program. And as I like to say, she didn't know. She was a lovely woman, passed away, but she didn't know, Matt, if the ball was blown up or stuffed. She didn't know a thing about basketball, whatever. But she
And
said,
that's okay. You don't need to know.
well, it was actually a blessing because I had free reign. Right. And so she said, you'll never get more than 10 kids to show up at practice, or 12 kids. And you'll never get the parents to take the kids off school grounds. Well, it was a small school, but we had 40 kids show up at the first practice on a blacktop in this little Hebrew day school in El Cerrito. And fast forward 5 years later, we raised $5 million to build a gym because the program got so popular. And we won a league championship in our second year, which speaks not so much to me as a coach, but we happened to have some kids who could play and they needed direction, And so anyway, I stayed there for 5 years to the point where we got the program ingrained in the school. Right. And then I went on to a coach at Berkeley High School, which is a complete 180, if you will, private little Hebrew day school to an inner city high school, 3,500 kids and whatever. And we got notorious there. The teams we had are still the last North Coast section champions at Berkeley High, although they did not win the North Coast and went on to a state to compete for a state title a bunch of years later. But we did really well there. I then went on to be the girls varsity coach at El Cerrito High School, which is my hometown. And then I honestly got sick of high school coaching, being the head coach, mostly parent issues. Again, at Tahiti, I had free reign, but anyway, the whole other story. But I started to get recruited by other high school coaches to say, hey, Barry, come and watch our practice or come into gym, whatever, right? And so I loved the consulting job because I didn't have to deal with any of the parents. I just get to say, if you run this or you think, anyway. So I did that for a bunch of years. But also the Bay Area, San Francisco is different, but the Bay Area where we are had no Maccabi presence. And so that bothered me, and so I actually found it. I went out and recruited 8 kids to run and we had a Maccabi delegation and we won a gold medal. And actually 13 years ago this summer, down in San Diego, and a kid named Jeremiah Kreisberg, 6'9", he wound up playing for Yale and Northwestern. I went out and found kids and made that program notorious. And then Maccabi USA kind of found out about me, so to speak. I don't even know what that means, honestly. But and an old friend of mine, a woman named Donna Orender, who was the president of the WNBA. That ball behind me has her name on it. I was her camp counselor when I was 19. So she was involved in MUSA, and she reached out to me and said, what do you think about, maybe coaching our national team? So it was like, it came full circle. And I just am very, very fortunate because I am here to tell you I can coach, Matt, but there's a lot of guys who can coach. So I was just lucky to get picked to do that job. And of course, I did it with all my heart and soul. We were the first team of the U16s, I think in the previous, 10 years to not win a gold medal. So I'm completely notorious in that regard. we missed 13 free throws in the gold medal game against Israel, and you're not going to beat a host team missing 13 free throws. No. But anyway, so that was a great experience. The next year we got to make a hybrid trip. And then, like I said, now I'm on the chair and trying to give back and help build that program. My goal, frankly, is to get it, to build it in other parts of the country. It's very centric to Philly and New York and LA and not as deep in between. So, I'm an entrepreneur, right? I'm trying to grow the brand in other parts of the country. Oh, I'm sorry. It's kind of big in the Miami area too. Don't get me wrong. But there's a million other pockets, right? So anyway, so my goal, even when I hired the coach, I hired, or recruited, so to speak, to run the team this year. He's from Chicago. I thought, let's find somebody who has presence in the middle of the country and grow it that way. So that's kind of long story short. No, I'm blessed for the work I got to do as a coach. It was from that coaching, along the way, because I was in the jobs business, I would start to get calls. Berkeley High is a pretty high profile program. So coaches come in the gym all the time but coaches got to know me not just as a coach, but also as a guy who helped people get jobs. 48 years later, I got a book I've written on the subject, writing another one now. hey, Barry, can you help so-and-so get a job? Can you help so-and-so get a job? Because many of these kids, as you and I both know, ain't going to make their living playing.
Yeah.
Right? They're not going to make it. But unfortunately, they get sold that bill of goods, and so they wind up wayward in many, many ways. So I finally said to one of my friends who's a big-time coach, I said, how many Keiths, one of the kids he asked me to help was Keith, I'll leave his last name out of it, are there in the world? He said, Barry, there's thousands. So, my little brain start to whir and whir and whir. And so ultimately I founded the Fifth Quarter Project, which is designed to help people who are so inclined to want to get help, because you can't help everybody. You can't. You'd like to, but you can't. Help them move on in their careers, not just how to get a job, but work with mentors and kind of scale their lives. That's what we do with the Fifth Quarter Project. We don't charge the participants a nickel. I try to raise foundational money. Have you had Roy Kessel on this show?
We've talked. Roy and I have talked. I think we're supposed to talk again.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Anyway, I called him up one day. We tripped over each other in a Maccabi event, actually, or a podcast or something. I had a fiscal sponsor that was local for the Fifth Quarter Project. So I don't want to invest all the energy in actually founding a nonprofit per se, because there's a lot of back office stuff to do that. And I'm a recruiter and I can teach. So I'm really good at helping people get jobs and finding people and all that kind of stuff, but I don't want to run a back office. Right. So I found a fiscal sponsor who handled all the money. If you wrote a check to the BACR, Bay Area Community Resources, they would, for $1, they would take 10 cents to do the accounting, and they would put 90 cents in our account. And that worked great for me. But when I went to scale the thing, I found out that if I wanted to do business or find entities in other states, because I have something now called a 30-city challenge, and I don't know how long this goes. I won't get into it too much. So I wound up, through Roy's advice, I now work with an organization called Players Philanthropy Fund. And it's run by a guy named Matt Stover, who wears a couple of Super Bowl rings. He was a kicker. Mm-hmm. And they've got about 270 smaller nonprofits that they are the fiscal sponsor for. So it worked great for me. Many of the nonprofits are sports oriented, and everybody from Justin Thomas to, I bring up Justin and Pam Shriver because they house those guys, and they're both in the news a little bit these days because Justin just did a great thing by writing a check to a kid who just qualified coming out of the Corn Ferry Tour. I wish I remembered his name. Justin wrote a check to fund this guy's next year on the tour so he could pay entry fees and all that. So bless Justin. Anyway, his nonprofit is a part of Players Philanthropy Fund. And then Pam Shriver, I just read the article today, was very vocal about what's going on with Naomi Osaka. She is also, her foundation is a part of Players Philanthropy. So I'm in the right group there. I might be low man on that totem pole, but more people, kindred spirits, to what we're trying to do. And, that's kind of, the long story. So I had to do what I'm doing. Nobody else was, there's kids who, organizations helping kids read and after school and get into college because of what I did as a recruiter. I know how many people go to college and then get jobs, and I don't care, athlete, not athlete, you're not happy. You don't know how to make next steps. And all of a sudden you're 25 years into a job in accounting or something that you don't want to be doing. I got, shit, Matt, I'm old. I mean, I had countless calls over the years. Barry, can you help me morph out of this? So the Fifth Quarter Project is kind of a perfect congruence to my avocation as a coach and my vocation as a headhunter. And so that's what we're doing with the Fifth Quarter Project. So I don't even know if we're going to go that way, but that ties this whole thing.
We're going to talk about whatever. First of all,
we're done. We're done. Thanks.
This is your show. We're going to talk about whatever you want to talk about, whatever you're working on, whatever you're passionate about. But we'll go back a few. I wish I would have known more about Maccabi when I was younger. I would have loved to play, although I think I was a little bit of a late bloomer. So when I was in high school, maybe like sophomore, junior year is when I kind of took off. But I would have loved to have played. What do you feel about? How do you feel about the hack of Ben Simmons Did you see any of that yesterday?
I didn't actually.
Talking about free throws, you're talking about the
Yeah, no. Well, look, we have a very small little patio in our home here, and I think it's about 15 feet square. And years ago, I put a rim up back there, and so I used to take my son out every night after dinner. And he loves to play. In fact, he just played his first pickup game. He's now in his 30s. But every night after dinner, we would go play horse. And of course, when it got to game point, I'd always walk to the free throw line and say games are won and lost here. And I would always try to ingrain that in him in some way, because I don't Ben Simmons. It's any coach who knows what they're doing will tell you this is it, right? You got games get stopped at the end, hack a Shaq, hack anybody, to try to get the game stopped and the clock stopped. So I didn't see Ben yesterday, but I can assure you, did he miss a bunch of free throws? I don't even know.
I think he missed his first 11 in the series, and then they started hacking him yesterday, and he maybe hit 50%. It always amazes me in basketball, because you got everyone's shooting threes now, and Embiid's knocking down threes, and Luka and Jokic and everyone.
Yes, everybody.
They're all hitting threes, so they're all able to shoot, which they might not even have grown up being a shooter, but they turned into it. So now we're looking at someone like Ben Simmons and Rajon Rondo, who are those guys are triple doubles waiting to happen, but they can't hit a shot. Imagine how good they'd be if they could hit a shot.
It's it could be a whole other conversation, right, Matt? Yeah. But some of it is, I think, the way the game evolved, right? And I don't want to blame AAU, right? Because it's blaming anybody is stupid. But I just think that I don't think that kids work enough on their skills, right? They work on their kind of overall shooting threes. I mean, look, I've been a youth coach, after I stopped high school coaching, I still, coached in a youth program, and, you try to teach the game, right? But free throws are such a big deal. I just don't think it's a point of focus. And because obviously I'm old. I didn't grow up with 3-point line, yeah. Right? So when you shot from the top of the key, that was not a great shot. Now the logo.
First shot in basketball, they would say, you got a foot on the line.
Right, exactly, right. So, but anyway, I think it's terrible, but these guys get by for other reasons. But I don't believe that you're going to win too many championships if the guy who has the ball in his hand most of the time can't shoot free throws. I just don't think you're gonna, because that's who you'll hack, and he's got the ball because he's not going to lose it otherwise. But anyway, so that's a whole other conversation.
I love it. I played a very little bit of AAU, and it's a lot too much politics in that stuff, and it's ripe with fraud and corruptness, but there's a lot of good that comes out of AAU. You get people an opportunity to shine and showcase themselves. But where I see the problem is when I play is everyone chucking up threes like Steph Curry from all the way out, and the problem is they're incentivized because when we play pickup ball, in some of it's twos and ones. So not only is it a better shot, now it's increment better.
It's double.
It doesn't even make sense to shoot at 2 anymore.
It does not.
Because I could shoot, 40% from 3 is much better than what I'm going to do from 2. So, and 50% even if I'm open.
We had a mantra at Berkeley at some point, 3 or key, right? Either shoot a 3 or get into the paint.
Yeah.
Because to your point, right? And so, but now look, that's changing a little bit because guys are running you off the 3-point line. So you better be able to kind of pump fake and, get 1 or 2 dribbles and pull up.
Yeah.
Look, a 15-foot jump shot should be chopped liver for everybody, but it's a whole other thing. And you're right. AAU, there's a lot of good that comes out of it, but some of the bad, some of the bad, because there's a lot of good, and I'm not here to diss anybody, honestly, is the mixed message on what we're trying to solve, to go back a little bit to the fifth quarter project, because most of these kids are not going to realize their dream. If there's a chat here, I could put an article in the chat. Have you heard, you must have, of a guy named Shamgod?
Yeah, of course, Providence.
Right. So he is a perfect example of the kind of people who we're hoping to be able to help, because he was an amazing player, right? They named the ball handling mood after him. He tells a story. I got to find a way to put it in the chat if I can.
Yeah, we could put it in afterwards too.
Okay, great. Okay,
I
so
don't even
anyway,
know how this works here.
right. Okay, good. I'm glad. So I'm not the only technically challenged person. He tells a story, and it's a recent story. He had come home from, so his playing days were over. And again, he's God, sham God. He's not, even a lower level. He came home from Europe, no more kind of gas left in the tank. He's 30 some years old, and he didn't know what he was going to do. And the problem is he couldn't even admit it to some of his friends, as he says, homies, because there's a pride involved. So then you get mental health issues because you're hurting, but you can't admit it. And he talks about it. That's why I really want to share the article with you. He was fortunate. He talks about it. He caught on with the Mavs. So God Shamgod right now is kind of a skills trainer for Mark Cuban and the Mavs. But he said, I lucked out. There's so many guys that didn't. And so there's a gentleman in Philly. His name is Mo Howard. Mo played in the league. He's a little younger than I am, played for the Cavs, played at Maryland. He's trying to help guys with his, that I have gear somewhere around it, Philadelphia Black Basketball Hall of Fame. They're trying to raise money for guys who are Philly legends. Way better, 10x better than I ever could have hoped to be. But they need help now, in their lives financially, because there's this gap, right? There's this gap, and you just get diluted. Look, the game in itself is a drug, right? In the best of ways, and of course, in the worst of ways. Here you are saying you still play pickup, right? Because it's an amazing game. I can't play pickup anymore, but I would love to be able to, right? Anyway, the point is that there's this gap, and the gap that exists is what we're trying to bring awareness to, and of course, hopefully provide relief for, because there are so many people. But it's part of what the AAU promise is can't fulfill, and it just can't fulfill everybody, right? I had a conversation just the other day. I want to go back. It's kind of a small world. I told you I read this book called "In These Girls, Hope is a Muscle" back when I founded this program. So it was about a girls' high school team in Massachusetts. And the girl who was the star of the team was a young girl named Jamila Weidman. So I'm thinking to myself, gosh, I know that last name because I'm from Philly, right? And so as it turned out, I grew up watching her father play. He was a Rhodes Scholar at Penn. His name was John Weidman. And I spoke to a friend of mine who also went to Penn at the same time.
Do they have a building named after him there?
I don't know that. Actually, they may.
Familiar too.
Anyway, so John wrote this amazing book called Brothers and Keepers. And anybody who listens to this, if you want to get some sense of what we're talking about at even a bigger level. Think about this book, Brothers and Keepers. In the book, I always thought John, because I'm, too assumptive maybe. I always thought John was a kid from an upper crust area because he went to Penn, right? And he played basketball when he was a Rhodes Scholar. As it turned out, John was from not a great neighborhood in Pittsburgh. And he wrote the book, Brothers and Keepers, because John's brother wound up going to jail for murder. And he wrote this book and he said, why wasn't this me? You should be me, and I should be you. I should be the one in jail. And it's just haunting. In the book, he also talks about the birth of his daughter, who was beyond an incubator baby. He said they couldn't find the veins to feed her the whatever food she needed to get, and blah, blah, blah. And she was just on the edge of not making it. It's a haunting, haunting book. As it turned out, that daughter, Jamila, was the star of this team in this book, In These Girls, Hope is a Muscle. And Jamila wound up, when I finally read the book, was the star point guard for Tara Vanderveer here at Stanford.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just bizarre, right? This complete congruence of the book. And the story went further. So anyway, so my kids, I used to drag our girls team down because I coached 4 teams at Tahir for 5 years, boys and girls, varsity, junior varsity. I was trying to make up for all the lost time that I didn't coach. But we used to go down and see her play. And then one of the people who played on our 2013 team's dad played at Colgate. And I was talking to him about the fifth quarter project because I drove down to Southern California to see his son play his final college game against another kid who played on our 2013 Israel team. And I told his dad about the fifth quarter. He said, Barry, I need to introduce you to my college teammate, a guy named Dave Denenberg, who's the executive vice president of the NBA. So I was kind of, just a small world, right? So I spoke with Dave, and he said, Barry, I can't help you because I'm in the media side, whatever, but let me introduce you to two people who might be able to help you. One of them is the vice president of player development for the NBA, and her name is Jamila Weidman. So from 1999, reading about this young girl to now reconnecting with her, we actually wound up not speaking, but I have her email and was connected to her in 2021. The circle in the game is small and brings a lot back together. So the league has its own kind of fifth quarter, but they just want to help kids from the G League, and they were very kind and nice and said, we do our own stuff with this, but actually, the gentleman I spoke to teaches a course at Columbia. He said, would you speak to some of the kids I teach at Columbia? They're not our G League kids, but they're people who I teach about sports. So we're here to try to help anybody get the skills that they need to leverage themselves moving forward, because I will tell you that how to get a job and how to get mentors is the most important undertaught skill in any school. I actually call it educational malpractice. And yeah. I think people give it lip service, but again, I'm not a clinician. I grew up in that world. I found people jobs and mentored people in careers for 48 years. I'm not a talking head about it, like who wrote a book or is a PhD. I can tell you how it happens because I had to do it. I live in this house, supported my family because of those skills, and I can't teach geometry. But
nobody needs to know geometry anyway.
Well, I guess that's right.
We had that conversation about, my nephew doing math. My dad was an executive. He was a headhunter for the Big Six back.
Oh, there you go.
So when there were six, he was. So it's.
I may have met your dad. Seriously, because I grew up in the business in New York, and you're from the East Coast, right?
Yeah, he grew up in Jersey. He grew up in Brooklyn, and then in the city.
That's crazy. So
he played hoops back then.
Oh wow!
I'm trying to remember.
How old would your dad be, Matt? About
42. He was born in 42.
Okay, so he's a little bit older than I am, but we literally, because I was a finance headhunter. I was in New York 6 years or 5 years, and then came here, and I've been here forever, but here in California. But anyway, same thing. So, but remember, I always wanted to teach and coach. I think I prefaced my whole kind of bio with that from 18. So I always took on my job as a headhunter with a little bit of a mentoring, teaching, let's think next steps and how to do this. And that became, even if you get on my LinkedIn profile, that kind of became my branding, is kind of beyond just putting a peg in a hole, kind of as a headhunter. So that's really rewinds all the way to what I always thought I wanted to do with my life. I just happen to now not be teaching and coaching basketball. I happen to be teaching and coaching careers using my time, with kids, young people, as entry points. I suck at talking to adults. I'm pretty good at talking to younger people. So anyway, but that's honestly the overarching story. So I'm very grateful for the time I had to coach, and now at age 70, this is my passion project, the fifth quarter project. I'm kind of devoting. I just took on a couple board members because we incorporated Players Philanthropy Fund wanted me to do that, and I'm coachable, so I'm just trying to grow this thing and provide services to really anybody who thinks that they want to support this vertical of the job market, which is basically 20 young 30 somethings who want a direction home but don't know where to go to get it, and maybe don't have the resources to get it, whether it's connectivity resources and or financial resources. And that's what we wind up providing. But just a real quick thing, you were a late bloomer Maccabi wise, so that's my Maccabi mission too, right, is to expose it to more people. You maybe not even knew about it.
I feel like I knew about it because I grew up in a pretty Jewish area in New Jersey.
Maybe
I don't
not
know
enough.
that I was good enough back when they had, because the under 16. But who knows? I would have, if I could go back, I would have.
You
Brother would have definitely played. He was good up until about 16, and he was the best player he was a sixth grader playing on the eighth grade team, the best player in the town in sixth grade. So he would have been really good for that team.
I'm just looking at you. I bet you got a few loose balls in your life.
Yeah, I got tall, but back, 6'4" is not, when you're 6'4" and Jewish and in a Jewish high school, you play center.
Yes,
when you're 6'4" anywhere else, you play guard. So I was, I've grown to be able to play anything because
you're 6'4".
Yeah,
I'm jealous, man.
Being 6'4" is not. It's tall, but it's like when you're playing basketball, that's not tall. So
it's good.
It's a good height. So let's talk about the book a little bit.
Sure.
You wrote a book, and I know
Thank you.
There's a pretty good Dale Brown story in there somewhere.
Okay, that is true. As I told you, I did write a book. Where the heck is it? I think there's something. Okay. In How the Truth Will Set You and Your Career Free. So the Dale Brown story, I love telling it, actually, is the truth. I told you when I got sick of being a head coach in high school because of the whole other side of it, I kept getting recruited by, different schools, coaches I knew. Hey, Barry, come in, whatever. So that was great. I was working out at a high school called Monte Vista High School. Monte Vista High School in Danville, California, was the high school of Zach Ertz. Of the Eagles.
Yeah,
we got a lot of good athletes coming through Monte Vista High School, big school, whatever. And so I went out and helped Coach Powers there, and it was always kind of a bit of fun. But there was a young guy whose name is Peyton Prudhomme, who was he went to school there, and I was helping out at this point with the freshman team, and as it turned out, Peyton's, and then there was another kid whose name was Chris Prudhomme, and Chris was playing on the varsity. And as it turned out, their grandfather was this guy some people heard of named Dale Brown. And Dale, he used to come to the games, and he was not an overarching or overbearing parent, right? He sat in the stands with his hands folded or whatever. But it's a true story. He walked up to me one day after a practice, and he said, Barry, I really admire what you're trying to do with the kids. He said, men like you played a big part in my life, and I admire you for what you do. And I'm thinking, shit, I'm just sitting here coaching basketball, at that point, freshman at Monte Vista High School, and here's this legend that's walking across the, and he asked me out to lunch. And then he said to me one day, did you ever think of writing a book? And I said, no, I have not. He said, I think you really ought to. You have a lot of stories to tell and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I'll tell you what, Coach Brown, I'll make you a deal. I'll write a book if you write the foreword. He said, so 5 years later, it's hard. You ever write a book, man?
Have I wrote a book? No.
Yeah, it's hard. I'm
I
actually
hear it is.
Yeah, it's really hard. So I'm actually writing a second one called Winning the Fifth Quarter, which is in support of the Fifth Quarter Project. But I sat down and I grinded through this thing. I went to Chicago. I hired a writing coach. Anyway, long story short, I obviously wound up doing it. But I called Coach Brown. I said, Coach, remember when you said if I wrote a book, you'd write the forward? He said, I do, Barry, but how long ago was that? I said, well, do I have to be honest? He said, of course. I told him 5 years. And of course, he did write the forward for, How the Truth Will Set You and Your Career Free. But
5 years, that's not that long.
I guess, whatever it was. But he laughed at me.
Yeah.
But I just got an email from him yesterday. He's an amazing guy who really is out.
He recruited Shaq. He got I guess the original Mark Jackson. He played before, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. And if anybody on this wants, it's a shame that somebody like Coach Brown and what he's done for the game, and of course, social justice wise, his story isn't more known, right? Because they kind of get buried in some of these other stories. But if you got Shaq talking about Coach Brown, right, everybody would start to pay attention. Not that Shaq doesn't, he does. I mean, they're helping a young guy out in Chicago who got shot and lost use of his legs. and they helped him get a motorized van. I wish I could remember the guy. I have to fill some of these blanks in, Matt, for anybody who cares later on. But but he's a very understated but important part of the game in our country, right? As is Shaq, of course. But unfortunately, with some of the downside of social media, some of the stuff gets buried. But a guy like Coach Brown, his legend should be forever. I mean, what he's done. But anyway, I was very fortunate to get to meet him, and I was even more fortunate that he actually liked me. And so he was the one who induced me to do this. Basically, the book is what I believe, people should do, is to be honest with themselves in their current situation, and of course, be honest with everybody else and leverage the truth. I tell people the truth is a brand, and the truth is a strategy. And the truth is a mindset that if you adopt it, you'll go far less wayward than you might otherwise by listening to some talking head on the internet give you a hack of what to say in an interview. If somebody says that he say this, you say that, that's a bunch of horseshit. I
tell the truth more in business than I maybe should, but I find it's look, it all work out best for everyone. Those who want to take advantage of it, that's fine. And other people use that and they'll appreciate it.
There's no doubt. I mean, and you ever seen a movie, The Bronx Tale?
Yeah, of course.
So there's a line in that movie, right, where the kid, he's walking down the street with Chaz Palminteri, his idol. And all of a sudden he sees a kid who owes him $10 and he starts to chase him, and Palminteri grabs him by the collar. So, what are you doing? He says, that kid owes me $10. And in the infinite Chicago, I think it was, or New York, Bronx Tale, street wisdom of a gangster says, let him go. For $10, he's out of your life. And so to me, it's like, let the people go who want to take advantage of you or any of us being forthright. Get them out of your life now, right? So it's like, there might be a short downside, but it won't be a big, long downside because you'll filter through the people. And I don't care if it's in your business, in your career, I don't care where it is. At least if you're telling the truth, Matt, or anybody, you're providing the conversation with one constant, right? And you can play off that. You know what I mean? In other words, so that's it. Anybody wants to take advantage, they'll get shown sooner or later.
You would hope so. It amazes me. The thing that maybe amazes me the most in life, and I don't get surprised by a whole lot anymore, is the amount of lying that happens when they know that there's a 99.9% chance that they're going to be exposed as lying about that thing. Like, I get if you lie about something that maybe no one's ever going to know about, but if you know it's coming, just be honest about it. It's always going to be less than whatever happens if you get caught about being, lying down. So that's what really kills me about the type of lies you hear from, athletes and celebrities and
onward.
Whoever, regular people, people it's
it is. And that's why I tell people the truth is a brand. You want to separate yourself from the market? You want to find like unique selling proposition or what your strategic advantage is? Be honest.
Yeah. I did start to write a book.
Good for you.
It was about kind of like all my shenanigans when I was younger. And I thought would have been a pretty good book. There was a book called I Hope There's Beer in Hell from this guy. He's an idiot. I think half of his stories are made up. He got MTV fame and all that. And it was sort of in the line of that. And now I'm married and I got a business. I'd have to put it under someone else's name. I think I have like 2 chapters in that book, but I did come across a guy who writes, what we learn from 80s movies. And there's people have done lessons that you've learned in movies in general. Yeah. And that's the book that I would like to write. And there's just so many, I watch these movies and they're great movies and even terrible movies that have these moments that really are, eye-opening to be like, I know it's meant to be funny and I know this is just a movie, but man, this is really great. It's really great advice.
Yes.
But also very heartwarming stories, and so that's something that if I did write a book, and maybe I will, that I would do it on.
So that's very smart. And if I may, I'll give you a little bit of tutelage. So if you think of a story like you're watching a TV show, whatever you're doing, you're making dinner, you're playing bat, whatever you're doing, you're on this podcast, and you think of one, jot it down. You don't have to write the whole story. The time that Jimmy and I, whatever, and just give yourself some sort of reference point, right? And have an index. I'm a big Springsteen fan, and my son is a filmmaker, and I've exposed him, and he's a very creative guy. But I used to show him I've taken him a bunch of Springsteen shows, but I would always talk about the book. Springsteen had these notebooks, and the story that was about song A wound up in song, Z4, but the story was etched in his brain, right? And so you have all these stories, is my point. Don't sit down one day and try to recall them all at the same time, right? No, seriously.
I know. I started thinking about, like, I have all these chapters. You'll be like, okay, I know I can write a chapter on this, or maybe this chapter has to be. But yeah, that's good advice to
get a journal.
Yeah, I have my Gator journal.
Right. So make your books journal. There you go. Right. Make your books journal. And Billy Donovan, by the way, was in our gym looking at a kid named Dior Lowhorn back in the Berkeley High days. So a lot of these guys, have come through. But get a journal and just write a chapter. The day Billy and I, I don't know. I'm not here to write, but don't sit down, pardon me, and just try to do it all at once, because you can write I'll share this with you. If you think of a story that's kind of fun, right, that you would want to maybe talk about, do yourself a favor and write a blog post, even if you never publish it. Right. So write a post of 500 words, right? 375 words, just about that story, or a to be continued. I don't know the stories, right? But if you do that, right,
I'll send you the chapter I wrote.
Please do. No, because I know guys who have written really successful books that was an amalgamation of blog posts.
Well, go also look up. Well, I'll send you the Beer in Hell. You can just read it.
I would love to, because
about that, and then you'll know what I'm talking about. But
sure, I mean, there are so many different ways to do it. I have. Let me see if I can find it.
But you know what? Also, don't. I don't know, because I haven't done it, but it's very hard to write a book that's going to make you rich, right? So write a book not to get rich.
No.
Write a book because you want to share information with people, or you want to entertain people, or you want to motivate people. That's really why you should write a book.
My mantra, somebody taught this to me: educate, entertain, and inspire.
Yeah.
I mean, if you do that, that's it. I mean, look, Pete Carril, kind of my basketball coaching hero. Yeah, I got to meet him. I spent 2.5 hours in a room one day with Coach Carril. In fact, I was just talking to somebody about this on Saturday. He thanked us for coming because he loves to talk about basketball. And the way I teach the game is very, very, if I had one coaching mentor, it would be him. But this book, Smart Take from the Strong, if you send me your address, I'm going to mail you one, because I have a stack of them, because I mail them to people as, as gifts, as friends and thank yous, whatever. This is a book of anecdotes, right? This is not a novel, right, Matt? It's a book of, he taught guard, he taught greed. He has just these little segments in here. He has a great thing, 25 things to remember, my favorite of which is I would never recruit a kid from a 3-car garage. It's one of my favorite Carrilisms.
Okay. Well, hold on a second. We have 3 garages. We have a 2-car garage, and then we have a split. There's a third one, but I've converted that garage into a man cave. So I'll have to ask him if that counts. We don't have kids.
You can do that. His other adage about is, the ability to rebound is in inverse proportion to the distance that you live from the railroad tracks. There's a hunger to it at this point. But anyway, he's just such an entertaining man and a Yoda, really. But anyway, I'm going to send you a copy of this. I want to, but not just for you to read it for the content, because as a basketball guy, you'll love it, but also as a model to write a book.
Yeah.
Because this is not a novel. You know what I mean? It's a bunch of just a little tales, and and he's teaching and he's educating and he's completely, he's one of the funniest people you'll ever meet in your life. But, and a hell of a tennis player, apparently. I never did get to play with Coach, but I think you should write a book, but start again, just even by naming the chapters, man.
Yeah.
Here I am teaching. Sorry.
I got to do. No, I love. My mom wants to write a book, and I told her I think she does it because I don't know. I told her I'm not sure who wants to read your book, but write it for the stuff that you want to put out, not for what you think is going to be, because you never know what someone's going to find interesting.
You do not know, and again, at least look, if she writes it, you have kids.
No.
Okay,
kids.
well, if you ever have
grandchildren, though.
Yeah, right, grandchildren. So
my brother's got kids.
For the grandkids, yeah. I mean, whatever. There's a legacy here. Look, I said it about Coach Brown, right? I mean, and he's written a book, whatever. But there's legacies here. The gentleman who is the attorney I hired to help incorporate the Fifth Quarter Project is a Jewish guy named Andrew Morton. Andrew's Jewish. So I start teaching them every time I write them an email. I send them a Yiddish phrase. I still know some Yiddish because, my grandparent, whatever. So again, dying language, right? Shouldn't die. So I try in any way I can to seed the clouds along the way. And if somebody's on this, listens to this, it's not Jewish. It's still a fun language. If you want to get some answers right in the New York Times crossword puzzle, you'd be well served to know a little bit of Yiddish, right?
Grandma used it. My grandma she didn't speak it, but she used the
catchphrases.
Yeah.
Mine too, right? So I know enough to be dangerous. But anyway, so books like this are great. I would encourage your mom to write a book. I thank you for asking me about this one. The one we're writing, it's called Winning the Fifth Quarter, is really directly in support of the core program of the Fifth Quarter Project, which is basically, the way that we ask people to kind of enter the program. You have to apply to the program because, again, as I said, I can't help everybody. I'd like to be, but you've got to want to get a rebound. You know what I mean? You got to want to go get a loose ball. I'm not a psychologist, to figure out why, but we are here to give you tools and show you what the upside of tools could be. I've interviewed like you, but they're kind of intranet. You've interviewed more people than I have, but I've interviewed scores of people, and I'll keep adding to it who have lived paths in their life. One kid is a player, Langston Morris Walker. He played it. He actually got recruited by Craig Robinson, Mrs. Michelle's brother, who coached it, who went to Princeton, right? But coached at Oregon State. But Langston tells a story. He said, Barry, the greatest day of my life was when I realized I wasn't good enough. He said, I was 24 years old. I was
start the rest of it.
Yeah, right. He said so many guys I was hanging out with were retired, but they didn't know it. He said one of my roommates was getting money in a paper bag, writing to his daughter on Skype for her second birthday. He was in Sweden. I didn't want to live my life that way. So Langston, kind of wise beyond his years, another gentleman named Jay Sammet, who's written an amazing book called Disrupt You. This guy's like a TED Talk speaker all over the world, genius man. He kind of mentored me. He's the one who told me, Barry, I love what you're trying to do, except there's one problem. You're old, short, white, and Jewish. And he was the one who reminded me that you could be the content guy, but you should find people to kind of, be the faces of it so that it's more identifiable, which is the mission that we're on right now. Because my name does not need to be on the front end of this thing. I just want to help communities. And grow communities by finding people in the communities. That's what we're trying to do. If you want to know the truth, I mean, we're trying to find people in 30 communities to put their name on the front end of this. So
talk about the 30 cities.
Yeah. Bro. So basically, so I built a course for this program. In fact, behind me, you can see some of the sticky notes.
Yeah.
I did. So I know my game, right? I know how to help people get jobs, but that's not enough, right? Because you want to enter, as any good marketer will tell you, you want to enter the conversation where the reader's mind already is, right? So it's like you can't just go dump stuff on people who don't want to hear it, right? So I started to do a bunch of research on former athletes and some of the stuff that sticks in their craw or bothers them or is causing depression. And again, Gad Shamgad's article is a great representation of it. So I started to do a bunch of research on the frustration whether they got screwed by a coach or they got an injury or whatever it was, right? And so the first thing I learned was people are hurting. So before you can go try to plant technical skills, in their brains, you got to work the soil. And I mean that in only the best of ways. And so the first part of our program is really trying to help people understand how special and unique they are, right, in their own way. Because, what did Einstein say? If you judge a fish by his ability to climb a tree, he's going to live his whole life thinking he's stupid. Right. Yeah. And, a mentor of mine said, we're all idiots and geniuses, just depends on the subject matter. Right. Again, yeah. I cannot teach geometry. Do not ask me. My wife could help, but don't ask me. And I'm not a great speller. But anyway, so the first thing we did in the first segment of the course, what I call training camp, is really to help people kind of get and write down and become familiar with themselves about some of the strengths they do have. Let's not worry about how you got hurt it happened. I get it. But, shots are missed, get a rebound. Yeah. Right, so to speak. Fumbles happen, go get the ball back, whatever analogy you want to use, right? So if people, and I'm empathetic to it, so what I try to do is explain to people the path that I lived, right? The path that so many other people live. My friend Jay Samad, almost flunked out of high school because he's dyslexic. He went on to be CEO of Sony Entertainment, because we all learn at different ways at different times. Like you said, all of a sudden you're 6'4". So, but education system has a template. And if you don't fit into that template, you're going to lose ground, and that's unfair. So the first part of what we do is try to reinstill or instill confidence, not just by fairy dust. We take you through and make you, write about yourself. What do you do really well? Why do you think you do it well? And show people the various models that you could use to get, from where you are to where you want to go, as we call it, right, Matt? So there's not one model. That's horseshit.
No, there's no playbook.
There's no playbook, right? But you can have a game plan. And it's funny you brought that up, because in the book I'm writing called Winning the Fifth Quarter, I said, this is not a playbook. I don't have plays here. I want you to have a game plan and a strategy, right, that based on your strengths, right, and then we can make a winning game plan from your strengths, because mine can't be yours, right, and vice versa, and so stop trying to be somebody else, be yourself. So that's the first part of the program. Once they get that, we start to talk to them about the realities of what it's like to, to connect with people. I hate the word networking. I think it's evil, because I think it connotates transactions. I love the word connecting. I really do. I think connections are so valuable, right? Because there's no expected quid pro quo. It's just, he's a good dude. Like, after this conversation, I want to know you more, just because, you're a Paisan from the East Coast and you like playing basketball and we're both sports minded. I'm way older than you, but I don't feel that means I couldn't be connected, right? Right.
We can talk about what it was when you were doing it, what it was when I was doing it.
So I love that, right? And so we talk a lot about that. Like, don't look at people as tickets in transactions. Try to connect with people. Look, Dale Brown adopted me. Who the hell am I? But, the relationship now stands on dozens of years, right? Connection. Yeah. So anyway, we talk a lot about that. Before we get into the nuances of any other thing like writing resumes or interviewing or any of that, I try to, kind of help people get enriched on themselves. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the first part that we do. And it's extensive. So I make people apply, Matt, because you know what? As much as people might delude me to apply when they apply, oh yeah, I'll do it. They kind of, because they want instant gratification, back to the 3-pointer, this whole mindset of instant gratification. So the application process weeds some people out, and the first part of the program weeds something out, because some people just get me a job, Barry. No, I'm not doing that, because my ass is on the line too. Right. So you make people understand the rules of the game. And so we've taught some cohorts, but like I tell people all the time, if it's Barry Kleiman's fifth quarter project, it's great. It's good content. I wrote a book. Who cares? But if it's the Warriors or the Pistons or the Heat or whomever, and they want to champion the fifth quarter project in their community,
yeah, that's
instead of 15 people signing up, Matt, 1,500 people will apply, right?
Yeah.
And the content's no different. It's just, for lack of a better term, the branding.
Yeah.
Right? So what I've tried to do, and I tell these teams and whatever, you don't even have to give me money. I'll foot the bill for this for right now with my time and whatever, because I know if we help enough people, we will do well otherwise and scale this thing. But the other thing is, if you come through the program and you do well and you find success beyond where you were, I ask participants, the only thing they owe us is to give 100 service hours in their community. So if you're not in Miami, you're in Orlando, or
I'm in West Palm.
West Palm. Okay. So anyway, so if my nephew, by the way, is on a PGA tour. He just played that event down in West Palm. I can't remember
awesome.
the name of it. Yeah. We'll talk about it in another conversation. But so if you're in Orlando, right, or Miami or whatever, go into your community and give 100 service hours, because now you've been helped, right? And someone reached out.
Pay it forward.
Pay it forward and get used to that, because the people that I want to be in the fifth quarter project are people who are not just receivers, who are also givers. Because I think if you got on my blog, Matt, the title page is called Share the Ball, because I believe, again, Coach Carrillo would be proud of me, because if the ball moves and people help other people and help other people and help other people, we'll get beyond where we are, you know, societally and whatever. But if it's just everybody's compartmentalizing and hoarding shit,
we shared a post today from Matt Higgins. It talks about helping. If we all help 10 people and those 10 people help 10 people, and
that's it, right?
It just goes nuts. You talk about, like, you know, a ridiculous amount of people, and we can all get the help that we need.
Correct.
I want to.
I got to read this article. So anyway, so just real quick. So I figure if we can help 100 kids in one community, that's 10,000 service hours. We will help somebody with 10,000 service hours. Do it in 30 cities, 300,000 service hours, all because we help people kind of get where they wanted to go. That's the model. I'll shut up.
Yeah, no, we're going to get, you see the information at the bottom on how you can get in touch. We're going to wrap up with two last questions.
Please. Thank you. Sorry for blabbing.
No, you did. That's why you're here, to talk about what you're doing and what you're passionate about. Who's the Mount Rushmore of coaching in basketball? Could be college or pro.
It's a tough one. I mean, if I didn't say Coach Wooden, you know, I don't think I'd be paying attention really well. But, you know, people say, well, he didn't. Not everything he did was completely on the up and up. I mean, whatever, and that's another story. But because Coach Brown thought so highly of Coach Wooden, and Coach Brown has been such a great mentor to me, I would be unappreciative to not at least use Coach Wooden as a possible. And of course, his accomplishments speak for themselves. And if you listen to Bill Walton and some of the people play for him, they would corroborate. So it'd be hard to leave him out. I think the world of Coach Popovich and Coach Kerr. I love the way they communicate. I learned so much from watching them communicate with players, modern players. I just saw a clip the other day in Popovich's huddle where he said, raise your hand if you think we can trust the kid from Australia, the little point guard. I'm looking right. He played at St. Mary's.
Yeah.
Can't think of his name. Patty.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If we all trusted Patty won't get his fourth foul, and everybody raised their hand and he's looking around. So that's coaching, right? I mean, that's like really So
yeah, like Hoosiers.
Right.
Last play in Hoosiers.
Right. So I'd be remiss to not include them, but I don't know. That's a bad answer, but it's as good as I can do for right now.
All right, no worries. We'll let you go with this. We asked this from everyone. You could pick one person. They have to be living. You can't be related to them. You get to spend a day with them. Who are you picking, and what are you guys doing?
Bruce. Yeah. Bruce.
Nice. The ball. Yeah, I wasn't a big Bruce fan growing up in New Jersey, which is crazy. And I saw him in concert at the Final Four, and it's a top 3 show I've ever seen. And I listened to some of his stuff. For me, he's a better performer than, because his music's not all what I love.
Yes.
But he's something else. The movie on him was great. His documentary and the books, and I mean, he's a legend.
It's also an authenticity, Matt, if you want to know the truth, because he talks very genuinely about his eras of depression.
Yeah.
Right. So he's not hiding behind that. He once said, somebody said to him, I want to be that guy up there. He said, I want to be that guy up there, because, he realizes that's a ruse. I just will share with you, my son's name is Benjamin Kleiman, and his middle name is on his birth certificate, Boss, Benjamin Boss Kleiman.
Oh, nice.
I just think Bruce is a representation of, he's my age, right? But of a lot of authenticity. And I'm sure there's stuff that we don't know. And also, I admire his ability to write and tell stories. So
yeah, he's a great storyteller.
Yeah, that would be my answer. Can I say thank you so much for doing this? I really do appreciate it. I don't want to get off this call without saying thank you.
No, of course, we're happy to have you here, and we look forward to helping out the 5th quarter and all of that, however we can. You've made it when you have a nickname like the Boss. Also, like Pete Carroll, if they name an offense after what you're doing.
No, I mean, that's right. I mean, I feel terribly not putting him in. Right.
Yeah. There's so many great coaches.
That's it. But he would be a complete X's and O mentor.
Yeah.
Without doubt, because of Princeton offense. Because again, I think that's the way the game should be played. Lots of movement, lots of ball sharing, minimized drible. And I was
simple and so hard to defend.
So anyway, I'm sorry, Coach Carroll. I'm sorry to leave you out.
No, that's all right. You had a fourth anyway. The5thquarterproject.org.
Yes, sir.
Check him on. You can catch Barry on Twitter or LinkedIn, and we'll see you at a bunch of these networking events, which you don't like, but we'll call them networking.
No, you know what I mean. No, in that context, I do. But again, when you reach into them, it should be to connect with like-minded people.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And that's really it. And so not just to say, well, I'm hooked up with so-and-so.
No.
Because, that anyway. So thank you, Matt. Really very
much. Great talking. We'll talk again. I'll send you some stuff. We'll trade some more stories, and we'll talk to you soon. We got another Wolff Den episode tomorrow, so tune in. WinAgainAcademy.com.
Thanks.
Check out your event tonight and tomorrow, and we'll talk to everyone soon. Thanks, Barry.
Stay safe, Matt. Thank you so much.